Hi, welcome back. Once you have mastered your basic wrapped loop, you can take that further and start making rosary linked jewellery because it's basically the same process. Now there are a couple of different ways to make rosary linked jewellery and I'm going to show you both of those. First of all, your wire gauge that you're going to use for rosary linking is going to be defined by the drill hole of the beads that you're using. So if you are planning on making a bit of a jumble necklace or bracelet with odds and ends from different strands, always check that the smallest hole available will take the wire that you're looking to utilise. Now if you're making gemstone jewellery rosary linking and you're going to use the same size gemstone throughout your piece, what I like to do is get lined up, get ready so I know how many gemstones I've got, and I cut segments of wire to all exactly the same length. I get them all lined up and I will make half of them into completely wrapped loops on both sides, and then I'll sit and link them together with the remaining half of my cut wires. So if I show you here now that I've got a little resinated abalone bead, and I would estimate that I need about 1.5 inches because I want to have a nice wrap on either side. So I'm just going to cut my section of wire like so, and then I would remove that for ease, and then I would line up all of my wires and cut those to be the same length throughout. When you have all of your wires lined up, it means that you're able to get the exact same number of coils around the central core wire of your rosary linking piece, and it just looks that little bit more professional, a little bit neater. So I'm going to show you again the technique that we just looked at for creating a wrapped loop, and that will be our first step in rosary linking. So I'm going to take my oversized bead, I think it's about a 14mm bead, and I'm just going to pop that onto the wire so that it sits in the centre. Now, as you know, I like to use my bent chain nose pliers. We're going to get quite close, making sure that the bead is sat in the centre. I'm going to give myself a couple of millimetres either side and give that a lovely right angle loop, exactly the same as for your wrapped loop. If I flip the bead over, you'll be able to kind of estimate just how much room you're going to need. Pop the pliers in on the other side, and we're just making a little bit of a Z bend, and that means that we're going to be able to rosary link in a really neat and lovely even fashion. Once I've got my little Z bend, and if you really want to, you can sit there and you can do that over and over again, so you've got loads of Z bends ready, and if you want to kind of have a bit of a production line going. So for the first side of the loop, what I'm going to do is just make sure that they're nice and straight, and I'm going to come in with my round nose pliers, and if you're looking for a finer piece of jewellery with smaller beads, you may want to reflect that with the size of the loop that you're going to create. So for this instance, I'm going to make quite a small loop, even though my beads are large, just to show you how that looks when you manage to get them nice and even. So I've created that circle from the right angle again, and I'm just going to grip, making sure that I don't cross over the wires with my pliers. I'm just gripping the segment where it's a little bit of a circle. Take the tail all the way around once and a half, like so, and then I'm going to flip that over and do the same on the far side. And in that way we're going to create one complete rosary linked loop, which is ready to be used in your production line if that's how you're going to operate today. So making sure that my loops are approximately the same size, one's gone to the left and one's gone to the right, it just means that it wears a little bit more nicely when it's on the neckline or on the wrist. So the tail's going across the top, I'm going to wrap that all the way around once and a half. And you can see that we can still get another loop on either side going around that central core wire. Now every time we add a little bit extra to that central core wire, we're in fact adding some strength and longevity to the piece of jewellery that we're using. I have made rosary linked jewellery with very fine beads and 0.4mm gauge wire. Now obviously that is a very fine piece of jewellery and you probably wouldn't want to go shopping or trekking or mountain climbing wearing something like that because it wouldn't stand up to the test. So today I'm using some 0.8mm gauge wire, which is an absolutely fantastic rosary linking wire because it's strong yet light enough not to create a piece of jewellery that's really heavy and draggy. So I've grabbed hold of my flat facing pliers and I'm going to grip hold of the loop at one end, and then I'm going to take the tail of that wire over one more time and just turn that little by little until I get my second complete loop. Flick around to the other side. Now the reason I'm doing this little by little on either side means that we're going to get the same number of loops on either end of your rosary link. So I've taken that all the way around and there's a little bit more space, so I think I might go for a quarter turn. So I'm just going to push the wire so that it comes up and then flip onto the other side like so. and continue chasing the wire around, always when you're gripping the loop, making sure that you're not squishing the wires where they cross over, because you will weaken the inner core of the wire and it will suffer from metal fatigue, and at some point it will fail. So rather than come to that juncture, just kind of avoid it by not squishing that bit of wire. So once you've decided that you have filled the core wire with enough of those turns and you're happy with the neatness, you would trim away the excess like so, one on one side. You're going to flip that over on the other side, and you see with the flush cutters, the flush side goes against what you want to cut and the angled side comes away from you. So then again, as we did with the wrapped loop, we're just going to chase those ends around nicely so that they sit tightly against the bead, making sure that they won't impact the skin, hair or clothes as you wear them and where you choose to wear them. So I'm just going to get that last little bit nice and tidy. If you are working with a resonated bead like this, you do need to just be a little bit careful that you're not going to cause any issues with the surface. And obviously some gemstones are more hard wearing than others. So if you're lucky enough to be working with a sapphire or a diamond or a ruby, for instance, they're pretty high up on the Mohs hardness scale. You can obviously find resources online to tell you which are the more hard wearing gemstones and which are a little bit softer. So to add this into another link, what we would do is do step 1 of our rosary linking design. So here's a piece of wire that I measured to be exactly the same length as the one we're working with. I'm going to find the hole, pop the bead onto the wire and go through stage 1, which is to create that lovely little Z bend. If you do manage to get this done in a production line, what it means is you'll be able to measure the straight line section between those angles and get it exactly the same every time, which again acts as a way of making it really, really regular, and it will look very professional. So I'll just show you on one side how to finish a rosary loop fully. So we're going to go to the stage where we get that little circle going on, draw the tail over, but instead of closing that up and wrapping, we're going to introduce that into one of the holes from the first segment that we created, and you'll see that that slips down quite nicely into the loop. Now the next section is where having fine tipped chain nose pliers really, really helps, because it's going to allow us to grip onto this segment between the two pieces and still not be touching the wires where they cross over. So we're going to take that tail all the way around. I'm going to use my thumb just to get that going. And at this juncture you would add a loop on the other end and start twisting around the neck so that you know you're going to have the same number of loops on both sides. Now I estimate that's going to be about right, so I am going to trim that away and just show you one last time how to get that nice end segment so that it is not going to impact on your clothing, hair or skin. So just scooching that around and then giving it a straighten up. So that is your basic introduction to rosary linking gemstone jewellery or seed beads. You can actually create beautiful rosary linking beads using your seed beads or pearls or whatever it is that you choose to work with. There is an alternative form of rosary linking, which is a simple loop. And what we would do with simple loop jewellery, instead of giving ourselves this little bit of a gap between the right angle and the bead, we would ensure that our right angle occurs as close to the bead as possible. And what we would do is roll those round nose pliers around until we get a loop that sits against the gemstone. And then just trim away that excess at the point where they cross over, making sure that you're not cutting the neck section, you're only cutting the excess away. Once you've got that shape into position, imagining, if you will, that that bead is nice and tight against the shape, give that a really hearty squeeze and you get quite a firm shape then within that wire O at the end. And to add that onto another bead, you would open it as if you were opening a jump ring, pop in your next link in the chain and then close it back up. Now this is ideal for a quick pair of earrings or very, very fast wear jewellery, but in terms of longevity it does have a weak point because it's not wrapped around. So if you were to pull that very, very tight, it would indeed open. So that is your guide to rosary link jewellery. Once you've mastered your basic wrapped loop, you can totally 100% get straight onto your rosary linking. I will be back with you very, very soon for another mini demi on your rose ring. Thank you. Hi and welcome back. I thought as a little additional demonstration to your rosary linking tutorial, I could show you how to create the end pieces. If you wanted to use the exact same wire stock as you have used throughout your rosary link chain, sometimes it's nice to be able to offer an exact perfection of finish. Obviously, you're more than welcome to use your own clasps that you have in your stock. It looks really beautiful with toggle clasps, but as I say, if you wanted to make your own, I'm going to show you now how you can do that utilising just wire. Now, your 1.25mm is really great for this if you have large enough holes in your beads. 1mm or 0.8mm for the closed end is absolutely fine. If you find that you wanted to make a J-hook, I don't really recommend using a 0.8mm, but what you can do is use a similar colour and then just link that into the end that you've created at the final piece of your rosary linked chain. I am going to just talk you through those options now. So the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is to create an oversized link on one end of your rosary link chain, and into this you will be able to pass the end of your J-hook if you're making it yourself, or you'll be able to pop on the open section of a lobster claw clasp, for instance. So I'm going to work today with one of those 8mm golden tiger's eye. I've just got that ready for you at the centre of the board. So if we imagine that this is the end of your chain, I'm just going to put a little coil here to signify that we've created our rosary link chain. And that's all ready to go. That's all linked up. You've done 18 beautiful inches of gorgeous rosary linking. And what I want to do now is to create a closed loop onto which I can put any clasp I desire. So we're starting again with that little right angle bend as we normally would. And then I'm going to draw the round nose pliers into play. Now you see these are relatively slender. They will taper in slightly different ways, so it depends really what you prefer to use as to which of the pliers that you want to purchase. So I'm just going to draw that all the way down to the base of my round nose pliers so I get a really nice oversized loop, which pretty much any clasp is going to be able to fit through. If you create it very, very tiny, as you may have done on your rosary link, what you might find is that you're not able to get the clasp into position. So I'm just going to hold on to that loop as we have done in our preceding demonstrations on the rosary linking, and take that coil all the way around until we've filled whatever space we have available. Just get that to sit into true, and again a little bit of wire hardening or work hardening by pushing together the two flat faces of your pliers will enable that to stay into shape much longer. Again, we're going to trim away, get rid of the excess, and then smooth the end around. So you will find that most oversized clasps are going to fit through that really quite nicely. So that is the closed end of your rosary link chain all sorted and ready for you to use. So what we're going to work on now is showing you a J-hook. Now, as I say, a 0.8mm gauge, even if it matches your rosary link chain really perfectly, might not be strong enough to last the distance, so I would recommend using a higher gauge wire, a 1mm or perhaps a 1.25. So I'm just going to drop the golden tiger's eye back out of the way, and imagine we're at the other end of our chain. I've got those rather large oversized abalone resinated beads to work with now. So what I'm going to do here is come a short way away from the bead and put that right angle bend in as if it were normal, but not take it all the way through. So I've just given that a bend to the right angle and then drawn it back again. So you can either use some bail making pliers, which I believe I have to hand just down here. These are 3-stage bail making pliers, and I'm going to use the smallest, which I think is around about a 6mm gauge on that. So we're just going to draw that all the way around and pull it back towards itself. Take it almost to the point where it crosses over. So you can see we've got an open loop just here. What I'm going to do is trim away just where it touches the bead, and then come in with my bent chain nose pliers and just put a little angle on there, and you'll see that that will then now act as your J hook, which will slip into the closure that you made at the other end of the chain, like so. Now, before you put that into use, again, I would thoroughly recommend utilising any flat facing pair of pliers, and I'm going to use my large flat facing pliers now just to give that a good work hardening. What you can do is just push that so that it's really very, very close to the position of the core wire that passes through the centre of the bead, and just give that a little bit of a squish between the flat surfaces here. Using a higher gauge wire will mean that that will harden up really lovely, and then that's going to last for years to come, and you can close even behind your neck. It's a really easy way of wearing beads that you have created using the rosary linking pattern. So I hope that's a little helpful extra demo. I do plan on releasing a video in the near future which is all about creating your own findings, and we'll cover that in slightly more detail, and also show you how to make my lovely double J hook, which is a really nice thing to close up some handmade jewellery with. So I look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Bye for now.